Stathopoulos and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible podcast, Grow, Scale, Master.
An energetic approach to drive progress, master skills, build strengths and put the strategy back into rapid business and personal success.
Backed by real-world experience in rapid scaling to playing the long-term game of business, it's the story of all the lessons learned on the journey to mastery.
Be inspired, renew your energy and chase the future with Grow, Scale, Master.
Con, one of the most important things, and it's been driven home to me all the time inside a business, is about getting the vision back. And I think that this is an interesting thing is that, you know, as a leader, you set out on this incredible course about where you're going to go and take your business. And then there's a million and one things can come at you. And I think that, you know, Vern Harnish had said it pretty interesting. There was in a webinar during the course of COVID, you know, when it had first happened. And he said, you know, like sometimes you're in this position that you're climbing the mountain of where you're going to go. And then you're enveloped with like this huge amount of fog all of a sudden.
Yep.
And you used to have this incredible vista that you could go and see out to, and you could see the top and you're crystal clear about where you're going. But all of a sudden now, like, you know, visibility is down to like 1 foot at a time. And the problem is that literally when people keep on looking down, all of a sudden when these situations or these things clear, you forget that all of a sudden you can see the vista again. And it's really important to be pulled by that vision. So I want to get back into that because I think that, you know, for business leaders at different times, we go through different events and organizations reach different stages of growth and everyone expects that bigger is better, but then you get bigger and then you realize there's different complexities and you got to choose your problems.
Yep.
And, you know, I had a guy the other day who goes, geez, selling houses was so much easier, wasn't it? I was like, yeah, good to see you, Con. Okay, so let's talk a bit about that. So when organizations go through periods of change, like, and have you seen this? Like, I know you've been around lots of businesses where, like, you know, it was really exciting and on its way to growth, but you know, different events happen and kind of get in the way. Does that happen to leaders?
It does. I think there's a couple of things there, right? So you've got life stages, life events, then you've got business events, you've got market events. So I think for us, in my experience, you know, being at McGrath in the early days, 2014 was my first year at McGrath. That was exciting. The market had shifted. There was, you know, it'd come out of a slumber post GFC, and we had agents that were, you know, in momentum. We had agents that wanted to join the business, and to see that energy and momentum was phenomenal, right? And you could see that vista and you could see the horizon, and then things got a bit blurry. You know, we had a float and then we had post-float. We had a listings cliff that fell off, and then we had an agent exodus and all sorts of other things that happened. So I think when I've reflected back on this, getting the vision back, sometimes, you know, you got to take one step backwards to be able to move 3 or 4 steps forwards. And sometimes your best laid plans either come to fruition, or sometimes there's a bit of a zig and a zag, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to be anything except clear with this. Sometimes the vision changes.
Of course.
And it doesn't change because of you. It changes because of the things around you, the people that you've introduced in the business or whatever. But yeah, this is really important because I'm seeing a lot of this.
And I see the tension too, in that, like, sometimes as directors are at different ages and different stages.
Yep.
And I think that one of the top points I've got here is like profit mode versus growth mode.
Yes.
Where, like, you know, you're really keen on wanting to buy that rent roll or invest in that thing or do that new piece of infrastructure. But everyone else well, not everyone else, but there's one person, for example,
or others,
in the director group who's like, no, I just want my profit.
Yeah, I don't want to invest in that.
And I had a great call with a really good dear friend of mine. He's in real estate on Friday, and he said, oh, look, you know, we've got this person who might be stepping off in about 18 months. But the whole business is now in this holding pattern
for 18 months
to see whether or not they may or may not step off. And so then now, well, how do we get strategically clear, Josh, about, you know, where are we going and what are we doing? And I just thought, you know, like, alignment of owners, both new and old, is a really important skill set.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's understanding that and you're going through that, or like your partnerships are newer as opposed to multi-decades old.
Correct.
But the conversation is understanding there's going to be a day where someone may want to exit the business, not just because of age or event or something's happened.
We've already had that.
Yeah.
We've already had a partner, Phil, who moved up to the Northern Beaches. I think with this, it's a really, frequency builds trust, and that trust around what you're trying to achieve as a collective is really important. It's kind of like why we begin every one of our team meetings or events with our vision and the mission that we're trying to accomplish. And I think
keeping that forefront, because people are like, but we said it last year, why do we have to go through this again?
No, we say it every week.
Yes.
Every team meeting we're saying it to make it really clear, right? But I think the alignment really comes down to making sure that people have the visibility, people have the roadmap and the plan. And as I said earlier, sometimes the best laid plans don't come to fruition. So what happens when you need to zig, when you got to zag, that type of stuff, right? And I think that that's really important in terms of getting people to buy into that vision. But in saying that as well, a lot of people, mate, they just fall out of love with what they're doing. You know, they've been doing it for decades and, you know, it's been great to them, and then they just kind of change. They've had a life event.
But don't you also think that, like, you got to continually fall in love?
Absolutely.
Because, like, I'm going to say, you get agents who go, oh, yeah, but the market was better than... Mate, hey, today's the best market you're ever going to have because you've actually got a market. So learn how to play that.
Correct. I totally agree. Yeah, definitely. You do have to learn how to fall back in love with what you're doing. But more importantly, it's why are you doing it?
And if you've lost it, get out of there.
100%.
And there's a whole thing about, like, back to purpose, because, like, when you think about the purpose, like, you know, alleviate pain for Johnson & Johnson, feel like an athlete with Nike, free the machine with Harley Davidson, never stop improving with Josh Phegan. I just like that one. But I'm trying to get you to think that, like, it's the core driver of the emphasis of what it actually is that you do inside of the business. And I think that, like, reconnecting to that vision, now that can be done through having a 2-day team retreat annually. It can be done by having a proper conversation with some good mentors, talking to business leaders that have got businesses that are far bigger than yours, maybe in non-competing markets and what some of the challenges they went through, going to alternate locations. And I was kind of, you know, think about that sometimes you go and see something else in a different market and go, geez, that'll be great in our market. And you can bring back and nourish yourself to start to replenish yourself as a leader, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's kind of like why, you know, you need to have designated breaks throughout the course of the year to be able to refill your cup. Your brain needs the same thing too. What's going to spark up that creativity? What's going to give you that ability to be able to really take it to another level? And I think, Josh, the important thing here is every level of growth requires a new version of ourselves. And so the vision that we had 5 years ago has changed. We've actually achieved all of our Everest goals, right? If I go back and look at them, we overachieved them by a lot. Now, if we just kind of rested on our laurels, we're probably going to get a bit fat, a bit bored, a bit complacent, and that's kind of it. But that's not the journey. That's the beginning of the journey. I think what we've got to recommit to is what's next for us once we've achieved that goal.
So I love this whole conversation about living out the values. And you and I were both in a forum recently where a leader was talking about that one of their values was innovation. And he made an interesting comment. He said, you know, how could you have innovation at the core of one of your values but not have somebody in charge of innovation in the business?
That's right.
And I thought that was a really interesting conversation because, like, innovation actually drives, you know, the vision of where you're going and how we're going to make it faster, how we're going to make it better, how are we going to make it an easier consumer experience. And then, like, when you're really clear about where you're going, then you set the strategy. And I think that the vision doesn't change, but the strategy and the way that we get there probably does.
Correct. That's exactly right. What's that quote after 9/11? Don't rebuild, reimagine.
Yes.
Who said?
That was on the front page of the New York Times.
Yeah, and
Tom Peters talks about that.
I thought it was Tom Peters.
Yeah.
So think about that. You don't necessarily need to go and rebuild the business or the vision. You just need to reimagine. So what's next? You've achieved your goals? Great. What's next?
And you see people all the time. It's like, hey, you know, when you started this business, you didn't have past clients, you didn't have landlords, you didn't have, like, these hundreds of buyers that are already sitting inside of your CRM. But the thing about it is that literally you got to get back into resetting the strategy and committing to tactical excellence.
Yes.
Now, like, I mean to say, you know, shortly you're going to have Super Saturday coming up for January, and shortly that's going to be October, and we'll be talking about the training session for that. You can't go in with a less enthusiasm than what you had year one, right?
No, we've already met as a collective literally 2 weeks ago to be able to go, well, how do we reimagine what Super Saturday looks like?
Yes.
Because year 5, we've done it 5 years, we've done it successfully.
Yes.
But if we go and produce and roll out exactly the same strategy, the vision's kind of been achieved, if that makes sense. So we need to reimagine what that looks like. How do we make it better?
Do you think people get lazy? Oh, Colin will have this. Yeah, he'll just do it. Or someone else can do that.
That's exactly right. I did 9 last year. I'll do 6 this year, that type of stuff. So I think you're right about driving that day-to-day tactical excellence to be able to make sure that you can level up to that next level.
And so this is interesting. Like, you know, I went through recently and I was like, you know, just write down all the stuff that I hate having to deal with. And it was really great. And I was like, I hate that, and I hate that, and I hate that, and I hate that. And I just realized we had 1 or 2 little legacy systems inside of the business. And I was like, yeah, it's time for renewal. And it's kind of an interesting conversation because you look at that and you go, geez, the interesting thing is I know that now if I get that bit fixed, mate, the next space that we can go to on the visionary stage is insane.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've just got to go and build that. And the energy that comes from having a really clear, meaningful project that you know will significantly reshape the business beyond imagination is phenomenal. And I kind of want you to think a little bit about that. But like, you know, a lot of people got strategies in business, but do you actually measure and then adjust if they're not working?
Yeah.
So like, you know, I don't know if you've seen the Formula One movie that's come out. And I won't ruin it for you, but it's a great movie. But there's a really good part in that where you kind of see them going along. And one of the drivers has a strategy of deliberately going slow to hold back other drivers. So that the driver who is out in front has got less competition pushing him.
Right.
So he can make the better corners at the risk, to make sure that then he can go to win the race. And it's amazing when you start to think about, most people don't really think, if you had to say that there's 1, 2 or 3 strategies this year that were going to be the big things that are going to allow this business to double in its size or, grow another 500 managements or get an extra 300 sales, what actually is that and how do you measure that every day to make sure that you're making progress towards it?
Well, I love the creativity of business. I love the ability to be able to look at a problem or an opportunity and build a strategy around it.
Yeah.
And really go, how can we do Project 1,000, 1,000 net new managements?
Yes.
How can we do, a Super Saturday weekend with 200 plus on-site auctions?
Yes.
How can we, and like, what is kind of unimaginable?
Yeah.
Why can't we have one of those moments in our business? What would that look like? What would it feel like? How would that make our people feel? How would it make our customers feel? That's the cool thing about being in business, and that's the cool thing about, reigniting that vision.
Experiences that rapidly shaped you.
I am constantly reminded of this one, that relationships are not a one-time thing, they're an all-time thing. And I think that building that and going all in, and I'm like, okay, great. Like if you had to say the most 20 people that have been the most transformative people in your life, who are those 20 people and when was the last time you called them?
Yeah.
And I know that this sounds like, which is a big question, but it's like if that person actually helped you at a particular point in time or maybe there's a conversation that they had a transformative conversation, learning to tap back in. And I would say that a relationship's not a set and forget, we're connected on LinkedIn. No. There's more to it than that to go and make that sort of stuff happen, right?
Yeah, totally agree. One idea or experience that's rapidly shaping me is the genius in simplicity. So think about, at an open home, think about it from a consumer's perspective. We all kind of look and feel the same way. But you know what can be a difference? Just making eye contact with someone and a smile and say, hey, is this your first time here? Or, great to see you. Or
do you think that people actually understand what they're doing?
No, I don't. I think we're consciously or unconsciously conscious or unconscious. I know that sounds confusing, but I actually think people make things so confusing. This game, this business that we're in is all about human to human relationships. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of strategies, a lot of other things that we need to do around that. But the reality is you can stand out in a very cluttered field by just making people feel something that they haven't felt elsewhere.
So you know what, Con, I'm a bit underwhelmed with the AI experience.
You are?
Yeah.
Why?
I just don't really feel it's been that transformative.
Right now?
Like I've seen stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But even Sam Altman came out on the weekend and saying, it's not as, it's not as big. Some people are going to play some big bets and lose big money. But I think that this is the thing.
But I've become expected that when I jump it into Netflix, it tells me what I should watch next, and Spotify tells me what I should listen to.
But it doesn't get it right all the time, does it?
Oh mate, that DJ is so wrong. But there's exactly.
So then think about going back to what are the human to human elements that can separate us out in the field?
So I look at this and I tell the story now in the vendor paid marketing. I'm like, so someone comes to an open, we ask the question, have you bought locally, and what are your plans with the existing? Two great questions, and then hey, you know what? I'll give you a quick call on Monday and I'll just see if I can help you on something.
Yeah, I heard that on a podcast or somewhere on an Instagram video recently. It was good questions.
And so then what you then do is you then think, okay, as you leave, what actually happens is you get an SMS.
Yeah.
Now that SMS is actually a link, and this is the true story, and you will remember this, but one of the great agents here in Balmain, Cindy Kennedy, works at McGrath. She sends me the SMS, using HomePass, I'm assuming, and then I click on the link. But what did I do with that link? I forwarded it on to you, one of my best friends. I forwarded it on to my mum, And my mum, literally 3 or 4 days later, she rang up. She said, honey, I'm like, what? She goes, have you bought that house yet? I'm like, why? She goes, it keeps on appearing in all my socials. And I'm like, Cindy's got it right, because the stakeholder in the deal is now being told to encourage Josh to, go to the wallet and open up. But I couldn't do that because the moths would come out. But you start thinking about what you're doing.
Something that's changing your view.
I had a really good experience. I was talking to this lady, and she said to me, hey, there's something that you should go and check out. It was an app called Othership.
Othership.
And it's
Other?
Yeah, correct. Othership. And so what it actually is, and it's really the power of being in state. And so every day you can put your headphones on, and there's like and it's varying time. So there's like 4 or 5 minutes or 6 minutes. And then the end one might be 7 or 8 minutes or 9 minutes, whatever. And they're completely different each one. But there's an up and then there's a down, and it's a set of breathing exercises set to music.
Gotcha.
And it's pacing. It's awesome.
So what, breath in, hold, breath out?
Could be that sort of stuff.
Wow, that's
Or
cool.
you do fire breath, like breathe in, out, out. Or like, and it's, can I tell you, to get rid of the stale energy out of the diaphragm, the whole conversation around what it's doing, it has been seriously amazing. And the interesting thing, I'm watching on my vitals, my resting heart rate overnight is dropping through the floor at the moment since doing it. So the stress relief has been insane.
I'm going to download that right now.